Save the Semantics, episode 267. It is August 5th, 2024. My name is Myro. This is the podcast where I ramble on for a bit about some shit. Recording this on a Monday afternoon / evening. I am feeling pretty good for the most part, despite it being the beginning of the week. Like, once in a while, like, I have these moments where it's just like the typical kind of, whatever, the Monday feeling, the what is it called? There's a term for it. It's Sunday blues, Monday blues, Sunday sadness. I can't think of it. Like, once in a while, I'll get into that kind of headspace, and I just like it's like I don't want to deal. I don't want to deal with the start of the week. I had a little bit of that today. I just woke up feeling kind of crap. I didn't feel super great waking up. But I just didn't sleep very well. I think I went to bed at like 1. I just could not fall asleep for the life of me. It's just one of those, it's the worst. It's one of the worst feelings is not being able to fall asleep is awful. Even when you're tired, it's just such a, and then you think about it, you're like, why can't I fall asleep? And then you get in your head, and then you just can't sleep, and you're like, I forfeit today, man. Can I just give up today? Because I slept like absolute, dog shit. Like, can I just give up? You know what I mean? Is that an option? Like, can we have that as an option to just opt out of the day in general? Just do nothing. Just do absolutely nothing. It's just like, I slept terribly. So I just can't function. I'm just not gonna do anything. I'm not gonna eat. I'll just hibernate for a day to get over my complete lack of sleep. And then I'll end up oversleeping, and I still feel like crap the next day. So probably not an adequate solution. But yeah, I just wasn't feeling, I didn't sleep well. It was just one of those things. Like, for the most part, I think I've been doing okay for my sleep. I've been decent. There's been some falterings here and there. I've maybe haven't been super up to, I haven't been the most diligent necessarily, but I feel like I've slept okay for the most part. But I want to be just better. I still want to be better about that. That has not changed for, like, since I've, really thought about my sleep hygiene and all that stuff. So I don't know. That's something. I'm kind of just like groggy today at the end of the day. So I really just want to get, good sleep. Moving into the rest of the week. I was thinking of recording this, kind of the first half of this week. I was thinking of recording maybe tomorrow, but because that's sort of like after the first, it's basically like kind of after the quarterfinals. But I think I'm just going to hold off, because the gold medal game is going to be on this Saturday. And I think I'm just going to hold off and give like my full thoughts on the tournament in general. The Olympics overall, which is mostly going to be basketball related, because, again, like I said, I haven't really watched too much else, but I want to just give like a full recap instead of like, touching on the quarterfinals, the semifinal, like I'm just going to hit all of them at once this weekend. So get a full recap and talk about, the disappointment that the U.S. This might age poorly too. That's the thing. It's like, it is funny looking back on when I recorded things for the NBA postseason, when I was talking about it. It is funny when I give, maybe predictions or give my thoughts on something, and it's like, wow, this team was pretty impressive. Or, maybe going into the postseason, I think like, wow, I think it's going to be a tough one for, I would say something along the lines of like, the Suns and the Timberwolves. I'm like, this could be like a 6-7 game series, and it's like, no, it's a sweep for the Wolves. And it's like, well, I was not expecting that, and I think a lot of people were not expecting that either. So it just kind of, things can happen, and it is funny to look back on completely, wrong predictions and that sort of thing. But yeah, it's possible that whatever I say now, it will age very, very poorly by the end of this week. And in the same episode, too. So it'll be kind of like a funny little, back-to-back, if you will. But yeah, I think there's just going to be a lot to, delving into each specific game of the quarterfinal. I don't know. I'm just going to save my thoughts for the end of the Olympics in general. And maybe by the time we get there, I'll maybe touch upon some other events that piqued my interest or something like that. So yeah, I mean, obviously that's kind of been like the news on national, international news and stuff. Apparently the stock market's down quite a bit today. There's like a whole thing happening with the Japanese yen and US dollar conversion or something like that. I didn't really read too much into it, but I did see some headlines about that. So that's not great for sure. But I'm sure people are panicking who hold some stock, some level of stock, and just look at the numbers dip and immediately want to try to back out because they're a little scared. And I think it's just sort of what it is, I guess. I don't know, with the stock market, just it goes up and down, and right now it's one of those downs. That's my analysis. I have nothing else to. I'm not a financial analyst, so I don't know any of this. I just save that to the investment advisors or whatever, Anyways, I have continued to enjoy Unicorn Overlord. It's just been good. It's just been fun. That's just really consumed almost my whole weekend. I've really just kind of delved even further into the game and kind of the mechanics and that sort of thing, because there is so much that you can do in terms of navigating and essentially like customizing your characters to be as best as possible. Like I'm still trying to optimize them and try to get them to like the best spot possible. There's like the way I sort of look at it is like I have like my best units, and then I have my less so good units that I have to kind of figure out, tinker about, see which characters fit in best, and have them become stronger. Maybe I just need to level them up. Like there's a lot of things to kind of go into it, and the fact that the cast of characters and their classes is like so wide and varied, gives like just like a ton of just like complexity and a ton of things to consider. I do like, and maybe this is something where for some strategy, like tactical RPG, fans, this might be something where it's like, this might be a little too simulated for my taste. So the battles themselves, like, what you can control is essentially the movement of your characters, certain actions that you can take, but the abilities that the characters have when you go into battle is more or less set. And then what happens like during, a unit versus unit battle is sort of like it's like a simulated battle. It kind of, depending on the abilities, depending on skills, it essentially sort of like maps out how battles go, more or less, which I find it to be pretty interesting. I think for some people that might be a bit of like a bit of a turnoff, because you don't necessarily have direct action on individual units. For example, like in Fire Emblem, you can choose what each individual character can do in battle. Like you can, say you have like an archer, you can have an archer sort of place them in maybe like in like the corner of the map, but they still have the ability to make like long range attacks and that sort of thing. But with this game, depending on how your unit is constructed, which can hold up to 6 characters, you know, depending on the combination of these characters, it can dictate how a battle will turn out. So it is kind of like hands off in that sense. How you decide to upgrade the, their equipment, and, how you want to set up their skills is dependent on your decision making. But the result of the battle is sort of, you put, it's kind of like you throw a bunch of ingredients into a pot and then you see what kind of comes out. It's like based on this combination of characters, then the result of the battle is going to turn out to be positive, or it's going to be negative, and you might lose that battle. So there's like some there is like thought involved in that process. But in terms of like the actual, like the kind of like the chess play making, sort of more typical in traditional tactical RPGs, that's not maybe as present here. So it might take some getting used to there. And it's not exactly, I would say it's not exactly the most difficult game. I'm currently playing on the difficulty which is called tactical, which is sort of like the intermediate level, like right above normal and below hard. And I found it to be just like a really balanced experience. There's been definitely some difficult battles here and there, but for the most part, it's not something where I found to be like such a struggle where I have to like restart the whole entire level, or I have to kind of like, quote unquote, like save scum, where I kind of like, maybe in Fire Emblem, there's the option of having there's the option of permadeath, which means that if characters die in battle, they can't come back. And so you have to continue on with your roster, which has maybe one less character. So that kind of difficulty that can be really challenging. That can also be really stressful too. And to some extent, I have enjoyed that. I have played, Fire Emblem games in the past with permadeath, because it sort of, it really kind of has you focus on trying to do the best that you can. Like every move counts. Every single action that a character takes counts. And I think with Unicorn Overlord, it gives a little bit more leeway for you to make mistakes. And I think, like, even with the difficulty setting that I have, it's not like ruthless. It's not something where I don't know. I've never found myself to be super maybe there's very few moments of frustration that I've had with this game so far. It just doesn't feel like there's like some like stupid mechanic that gets in the way of you being able to progress. With like certain maps in some of the Fire Emblem games, there's like certain things in it where it's like reinforcements just like show up, and it's like, how was I supposed to know they were coming in this direction? They don't give any like indication of that. That was a problem that I also had with Triangle Strategy too when I played that. Like they just like, it's like, oh, here are reinforcements, and there's just like, they come out in the worst place, and there's just like, that's, I don't know. It's tough to sort of work around that. There were also some maps in that game that were just like, it was just more frustrating than anything. And I mean, there was a map that made me stop playing the game for like 2 years, because I couldn't get past it, and that sort of, you needed to kind of grind your level to, get your characters to be able to, I don't know, combat that. And maybe I just wasn't very good at that game, but that was that's kind of frustrating, and it sucks because like I wanted to be able to continue the game, but there I don't know, maybe it was just a straight up skill issue, and I just wasn't good enough at creating the combination of characters. But I tried that one level just a bunch of different times, and until I upgraded my characters and leveled them up by grinding a little bit, I just couldn't do it. And so that was a little so that kind of aspect of that particular game was frustrating. With this game, with Unicorn, I haven't had really the need to grind at all. I think the leveling is pretty balanced across the board. If you do happen to have characters that are under-leveled, you're given items that can boost the experience of these characters. So you have that option available as well. You're not going to run short of funds. Like the money in the game is pretty plentiful, so you're able to kind of use that to your advantage. So I think that for casual players who have never really played like a tactical RPG or like a simulation RPG, I feel like this is like a really nice sort of way to ease you into that. It's not super stressful. Again, of course, there are going to be moments where there's maybe more difficult battles, but as long as you have all of these characters available, you're really able to kind of work it out. And I think that's kind of nice too. Just being able to broaden this to a wider audience with how the gameplay is set up, I think is really great. And that might introduce more players to the genre. It's still pretty niche, despite, I think like Fire Emblem Three Houses is probably one of the most popular ones in this genre, but that's because of the things outside of its gameplay. That's because of its social gameplay. It's sort of, the story and the characters. There are things that people were kind of drawn to with that particular game. But despite that, the genre is pretty niche. It's not like the most, it's not going to be like a crazy system seller game. But like, I think that the way that they developed this game and the way it's the final product of it, I think it can appeal to more people. You know what I mean? And I think that's great, because I think there's a lot of I don't know. I think it's cool to be able to sort of introduce this to a different crowd that might not be accustomed to playing something like this. Sort of the ease of entry is a lot better in some instances. But yeah, I really have just been enjoying my time with it. I really like the different regions this game has so far. I think there's like 5 main regions in the game, and so far I've explored 3 of them. I haven't seen the other 2 yet. It'll probably open up as the story progresses, but I do like the distinct kind of style and distinct aesthetic of each region, accompanied by the music. I think the music really adds a character to each section of the game, and I really like that. Right now I'm in this kind of like I'm sort of like in the elvish, like I'm in like the elvish country region of the world, and I really like the music. I really like just like the vibes of it. It feels very kind of fantastical. It feels very different from the other 2 places that you start with. And it's just nice. It's like really kind of, I don't know. I found myself just kind of listening to the music, and just letting, just not really doing much else, but it's nice. It's really cool. And, I'm interested in seeing what the other, parts of the world kind of, sort of look like, yeah, that's kind of my, I'm sure that I'll have more things that I want to, touch upon, as I continue to progress in the game. Apparently, and this is some comments that I have seen, I really I really am trying to kind of hold myself back on looking up too much on the game. I haven't really done, I've just kind of, based on the reception the game has received, that kind of prompted me to buy the game. But I did kind of dabble in some of the, community posts made on on Reddit, and maybe some things, some like YouTube comments and that sort of thing. And apparently the game just gets better as it progresses, and that just excites me even more. So I'm really looking forward to it. Speaking of some other games, that also kind of has me excited. So today, a new trailer was dropped for the new Zelda game, Zelda, Echoes of Wisdom. I wanted to say like Winds of Wisdom for some reason, because that kind of comes off the tongue better, but it's Echoes of Wisdom. And the way I kind of went about it, which is very silly, honestly, I think I'm just gonna watch the trailer when it just like later tonight. I'm just gonna watch the whole thing. I've really been trying not to like spoil myself on like the mechanics of the game and that sort of thing, but I'm like, this is silly. Just watch the trailer. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, how much more? Because like I've seen like screenshots, and I've seen like other discussions online, but I've been like, I feel like that I just don't want to give too much of it away to me, and I'm like, I'm just watch the thing. You know what I mean? It's like, how much of it is it really gonna spoil? You know what to expect. Like, it's a Zelda game. Like, it's not gonna be that crazy. But apparently there's like a bunch of new, mechanics that are sort of showcased. They talk a little bit about kind of the world, and I think it looks to be a more like expanded version of the Link to the World, or Link Between Worlds. Link Between Worlds and A Link to the Past map. There's just more things that are kind of added in. Apparently there's a horse. You can ride a horse, which is pretty sweet. The horse looked really cute. I saw some comments talking about how the horse looks like a horse from Pocket Jockey, which is kind of funny. By the way, it's like I'm still like on the fence about whether I want to pick up Pocket Jockey for Switch. Like, part of me is like itching a little bit. Like, there's like a part of me that really wants to, but that could be a mistake. You know what I mean? It's like, how many card games do I really need on my Switch? And I also have Pocket Jockey on my 3DS too, and that just obliterated my time. That game is so addicting. It's kind of ridiculous. I had to like withhold myself from playing that game. Like, it's just these card games, man. They just like drag me in. Anyways, yeah, there's a horse. There's like various races and stuff like that. It's all good Zelda stuff, I think. And then, but just the fact that Zelda is the main character, and then she has all these other unique abilities that Link doesn't have, and I think that really sounds exciting. And I'm just gonna watch the trailer. Like, I've already read the stuff, because I'm like, I just don't want to look, because I feel like I'm gonna spoil myself, and it's like, it's silly. That's a silly argument. Like, just watch the thing. I did the same. I watched all of the trailers for Tears of the Kingdom. I don't understand why I don't want to do it for this one. It just doesn't. I don't know. My arguments are not very sound sometimes. I think I just want to have the experience, like, similar to how I approach most games. I want to have the experience to be as fresh as possible. But it's like, if it's just like, I don't know, for the most part, Nintendo's like pretty good about not giving away too much. So I think I think it should be fine. I really think it should be fine. And it's only like 5 minutes, so it's like, whatever. It's like, how much are they really going to give away? The new outfits look pretty cool too. I'm glad that Zelda has more outfits available, aside from kind of the one that they showed in the reveal trailer. But yeah, I'm it's gonna be, really, we only have to wait like a month, or 2 months actually, because it's going to come out at the end of September. But I'm very excited. I'm really excited to see and pick that up. Probably going to pre-order it. Probably going to be a day one. No, it's definitely going to be day one. And it's just like it's nice to know that the end of this year is just packed with games that I want to get. I already touched upon it when the direct back in June happened. But yeah, you got the Zelda game, you got Dragon Quest. Those are kind of the main ones for me. But there's still so many other games that I would be interested in picking up. But yeah, I'm very much looking forward to Zelda. I think this has sort of been a conversation about following Tears of the Kingdom last year, and there was just like a huge when it was initially released, like there was a crazy amount of just positive reception about the game and how much of an improvement it is over Breath of the Wild, and how Breath of the Wild feels like kind of like a beta version of Tears of the Kingdom, and then subsequently, like a few months down the line, and I talked about this kind of in my, I talked about this last year as well, but how there was maybe a bit of this, kind of a bit of a fallout in opinion about Tears of the Kingdom after its release, because I think people were maybe looking at it with a bit more of a critical eye, and how maybe some of the mechanics that were present in the game sort of nullified the experience overall. And me personally, I loved the game. I thought it was incredible. I thought, that was sort of like my quote unquote game of the year, if you want to call it that. But I did see, and I do understand the qualms that people had in regards to, maybe the story, or how the lore doesn't really make sense in terms of, continuing on from, Breath of the Wild, and how it connects to the rest of the, Zelda universe and all that stuff. And it's not something that I particularly care about too much. Story's not like the most important part about Zelda for me personally, but I totally understand why, some people had issues with it, and maybe that sort of, that kind of impacted their overall opinion of the game. And I think some people were concerned about kind of the direction of the franchise moving forward, about how it's going to become much more of this kind of sandboxy sort of thing, and they're sort of not going to be as focused on other elements, and the fact that there's not really dungeons and all of these things. But I think that with Echoes of Wisdom, they're gonna be incorporating some of those things in the sort of the the creative aspects of the Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wilds, where it allows a lot of player freedom in terms of figuring out puzzles and trying to defeat enemies and that sort of thing. So that aspect doesn't necessarily go away, but I think that with this new game, the fact that there are sort of these like kind of return to roots in terms of the aesthetic, and I think we'll see about the dungeons, like we'll see how that goes, but it seems that just the fact that there is like a 2D Zelda game, I think is really great to hear. I think I mentioned this when, kind of in my reflections during the June Direct, but I'm just like happy that there is this other Zelda version, right? Outside of the outside of the main, the quote unquote main, 3D version of the series, because that, that kind of core element and the way that the original game was, I think there's a lot of people that really love that, and I personally love it too. You know, I really enjoyed. I mean, A Link Between Worlds is it's one of my favorite, you know, Zelda games. Like, it's not up there in terms of like Wind Waker or Twilight Princess, but it still is like a really great game. And I think that having more games in that specific style, where a lot of people are really like, clamoring for it. It's not going to be the craziest, it's probably not going to be like 30 million sales like Breath of the Wild, but still, like, there's an audience for that, and I'm kind of part of that audience. Like, regardless of kind of what the game is, I'll probably end up buying, a Zelda game. And I think the fact that there are two very distinct styles in the series, I think is really great. And despite some of the mechanics carrying over, I don't think that like takes away from the spirit of 2D Zelda. I really don't. I think, 2D Zelda, there's much more of a emphasis on, like puzzles and, pushing blocks and that sort of thing. And I think with this added mechanic, there's gonna be more, there's gonna be that kind of creativity brought over from the Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom games, but you're sort of doing it in this concentrated format, which I think will lend itself to more, I don't know, just like more ways of figuring out puzzles and that sort of thing. And I think that's going to be it's just going to be fun to experience, and then the fact that Zelda is playable is just like, I know I've already touched upon this many times before, but it's really something. And I think that, if Echoes happens to do well financially, if it happens to sell well, I really think it should give precedence for Nintendo to maybe bring her as a protagonist in a 3D Zelda game. I really think that could be huge, and I think that could give, it was a pretty big switch up going from something like Skyward Sword to Breath of the Wild. I think having Zelda be sort of a protagonist or like co-protagonists with Link, I think is going to be that could be just another twist that they could add to whatever next installment is going to be coming out for the future predecessor or successor Switch, right? So I don't know, there's a lot of kind of possibilities to think about. It's very exciting. Like, not only do we have a new game, but also this could kind of give a sense of what the direction might be for future games. And I don't know, I think that's very, very exciting. And also just the fact that the game is already going to be coming out in less than a couple months before the end of the year, and I'll have the time to experience that, and then I'll have the time to experience Dragon Quest. Like, I'm feeling pretty good, at least on the gaming front, of how my gaming appetite will be very satiated by the end of the year. And I don't need, like, I'll see how depending, and I'm also probably going to be putting in a decent amount of time into Unicorn Overlord as well. So I'm gonna be good. I'll be good for the end of the year, until 2023, and then we'll see what happens with new hardware reveal. I am interested in seeing whether there will be like a September Direct. I think if that does happen, it's probably gonna maybe be a repeat of some of the things that are going to be releasing soon, including Zelda. I mean, the timing for that would be just right, because Zelda's going to be releasing like a couple weeks after, assuming that the Direct happens on like the middle of September. But I think that it might be treading some of the same things. But maybe they'll talk more about, Switch 2. We'll see. Anyways, I kind of wanted to just talk about, the trailer that did come out that I didn't really watch, but I know what was in it. I just didn't like put my eyeballs in it, which is really it's such a dumb argument to like make, it's just like, oh, I'm like withholding information for myself so I can have like future, like a future benefit, future appreciation for it later on. And it's like, it's not like, I think here's another thing before I end it for today. I think trailers, there's issues with trailers, especially movie trailers. And I think that movie trailers in particular are really bad about spoilers. And I think that's sort of clouded my sort of perception on trailers in general. Because like some of that might carry over into gaming trailers, it's more difficult to spoil things in gaming trailers because there's, I guess, in general, there's more content in a game than there is with a movie, right? Assuming that like most games are going to take, I don't know, whatever, you might put in like 10 hours into a video game versus a movie, which is at most like 3 hours, right? So the amount of things that can be spoiled in a movie is far greater. In a movie trailer is far greater than a video game trailer, but it still has me kind of like, I just don't really want to, I don't really want to watch it because I'm worried about what's going to happen in the movie. And I think I feel like I am justified in that, because some movie trailers they just give way too much away. Like it's like the whole thing. Like it should just be like a tease, but I feel like maybe I have no idea. I have no idea how marketing works or anything like that. But maybe certain things you have to show in a movie to really, catch the audience's eye, which I understand. I think it's probably not easy to try to figure out what you should show and what you can show. But unfortunately, it's just like resulted in things where it's like, I already know too much. I've already seen the movie. It's like, yeah, it's already been given away. So I think that can be kind of, it's a difficult line to thread. You know what I mean? I heard that the Alien Romulus trailer, that essentially kind of spoils a bunch of things. So I haven't really watched that. I'm not like the biggest Alien fan, but I have enjoyed some of the Alien movies. Maybe I'll check it out. But it's like, I think that there's certain things that have kind of ruined other things, and I think that the movie trailers giving too much away is kind of an example of that. And then it's just that on top of the fact that I don't want to, quote unquote, ruin the experience for me in general, and I want to go into something as sort of fresh and as blind as possible too, which I also think I'm justified in that. But I think with something like this trailer, which is like a 5-minute little preview, I think it's fine. I really think it's fine. Anyways, just wanted to touch upon a few things, talk about some game stuff. Again, I think by the end of this week, this upcoming weekend, I'll talk about the Olympics, my overall thoughts. Maybe I'll touch upon some of the issues that have popped up while the Olympics have taken place in Paris. A lot of maybe some subjects and some topics there to get into. But for now, I'll hold off on any other discussions until the basketball tournament is over and the Olympics are over. So yeah, that's gonna do it for today, and I'll catch up on later this weekend. All right, recording this on Saturday, August 10th. Recording this on a lovely afternoon/evening. It's cooled down a little bit. It's still somewhat hot. Still got a little bit of that summer heat going on. I think earlier in the summer it was kind of hitting. I mean, we kind of had somewhat of a heat wave going on, but as it's progressed, at least over in my area, it hasn't been too bad. But I think unfortunately, as is for a lot of California summers, I think the worst is kind of yet to come. I don't like putting that out into the universe, but I do believe that it's probably going to be the hottest this month and maybe going into September. So I'm sort of bracing for that and preparing for that. But yeah, outside of that, it hasn't been too bad. So gold medal match happened earlier today between the U.S. and France. I guess I didn't even really, I didn't talk about the semifinal game against Serbia. I mean that was a hell of a game. Probably one of the most exciting games that I've seen in a minute. I really can't think of another game that had those types of stakes. One game you lose and you're out. Because in terms of the 7-game series format that the NBA playoffs currently have, I really can't think of any. I mean, like, the finals are kind of a wash. The conference finals were a bit of a wash. So I can't even really. I would say it's probably Game 7 of Nuggets and Timberwolves that's had me the most excited for a basketball game, which is kind of, considering the stakes of all the other games that followed that up, I it's kind of a little disappointing to hear that, right? But no, that's true. It's kind of what it was. I think it's been a minute since I've really, I don't know, that was kind of, I mean, it literally is win or go home. But they pulled it off. They were down by at most 17 against Serbia. Serbia put up a hell of a fight. Jokic was doing his thing, but I think the insane level of shooting by the Serbian supporting players really, put them ahead earlier on in the game. And it wasn't until the fourth quarter that, when the U.S. made their comeback and KD had his moments. Obviously, Steph was cooking. It was all the old heads that that pulled it through, it was super exciting stuff. I think that I was sort of expecting, I was expecting more of this level of play from Serbia in the group stage. And sort of earlier on, we did get a little bit of a glimpse of that, but it turned into a kind of a blowout later on. And then, kind of Serbia really hit first in the semifinal game. It was just like crazy kind of momentum shifting. There were a lot of moments where U.S. were surging and they were sort of coming back, and then Serbia hit a 3 or something and then put them back up by double digits. It was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun to watch that game. The gold medal match between U.S. and France was pretty good. It was pretty good. It wasn't to the same level of excitement where it came down to the wire, but we had some good stuff earlier on. France, there was a lot of back and forth in kind of the first quarter of the game. It was okay, maybe this could be something similar where it gets down to the final seconds of the game. But I think after kind of in the second half, U.S. really didn't let go. I didn't really have, I don't know, I never felt super worried. There were definitely moments where they kind of took the foot off the gas, but I didn't have any concern considering who we had on our team. And Steph really just closed the door on them. It was incredible to watch. We sort of missed out on his play this past playoffs because they got eliminated in the play-in, but I'm glad that in a sense, and maybe this is just me sort of coping as a fan, but in a sense he sort of saved his energy for this moment. His play in the final minutes of the game were incredible. That's the type of shit that you see him pull off in just like any of his like vintage games, and to do that on like the international stage for his first medal, I think is just it was just like, incredible to watch. And I'm happy that he essentially kind of like, this is kind of it for him, you know what I mean, like in terms of like quote unquote legacy and all that stuff. I personally don't care too much about that kind of thing. I think, you know, winning does matter ultimately in a lot of sense, a lot of cases, but I'm, you know, he's done like everything that he has to do at this point, you know, winning all the championships and securing himself as one of the greatest players of all time. I think this sort of rounds it out with sort of this gold medal here and his play and everything. I think you know, whoever sort of went to the game and all of the other people that were tuning into this game really was, you know, he showed up, and he showed him, you know, why he's one of the best. And I think it's incredible, just another incredible part of his story, you know what I mean? Like eventually when he does retire and everything, like there's just another chapter, you know, there's just another piece to add. I think it would be great to see. There was like a documentary that was made about him, like is like on YouTube and stuff, but we want obviously like the complete documentary, similar to kind of the Last Dance sort of thing. I think it would be great to see something like that, you know, 10 years down the line. Not too soon, because he's still playing. So let's just maybe hold off on the brakes a bit. I was very just, I don't know, it was just like, you just get caught up in it, man. Him hitting those 3 threes in a row to really finish it off is just incredible to watch. I'm happy that others got to witness it for themselves. But yeah, they got their gold. Really the only match that had sort of, it was the Serbia match. I mean, this France match did have, you know, some competition for sure. I think when Wembanyama showed up, he played a pretty good game, but some of his other teammates did not do as well. So I think that there's still going to be moving on to whatever next international basketball tournament there is, like whether it's FIBA or the next Olympics. I think that France is going to be even more dangerous the next time around as Wemby gets more experience in the league and he matures as a player. I think it's going to be something else. And as our sort of the older players on the U.S. team. I mean, LeBron's not going to play in the next Olympics. Like, it would be crazy. I mean, I honestly wouldn't even be super surprised, but he's not going to play the next Olympics. Like KD and Steph, like, this is the last one, you know? So whoever the next generation of U.S. players are that are going to kind of take up the mantle after, it's going to be tough, man. It's going to be really tough. It's sort of thinking about it in terms of kind of these eras of, like, these significant eras of, you know, NBA and just sort of basketball history. The kind of the KD, LeBron, and Steph era is really kind of coming to a close. I think that this year and maybe the next year is really going to be kind of like a turning point for the league. If it hasn't already become one, you know what I mean? Like, I think considering how the last, 5 seasons or so, there's been a new championship. There's been a new NBA champion every single year. There's a ton of parity in the league now, and I personally think it's a good thing. For others, like, they might be like, well, there's no, like, real great player anymore. And, that might be true to some extent. Like, I think that, like, we do have, I think there is potential for someone like Wembanyama to kind of become the next great player. But there is still a ton of really great talent out there, just not to the same superstar level as Steph. So it'll be really interesting to see where the league goes from here, in terms of just like who the face of the league is going to be next, right? Because right now there's no real like, oh, he for sure is going to be the next big one. Like even with Wembanyama, like he had an insane rookie year, but in terms of like the team success, that's probably still going to be a couple of years down the line, right? Until his teammates, the surrounding cast, becomes better. That might still not be, that might not come into fruition until for a little while. So it's really hard to say, right? For there to be a great player on a great team. I don't know. It's hard to say. Like we still have Jokic, Embiid, Giannis. Like we still have them as kind of the sort of that, like people sort of in their late 20s and early like 30s, that are sort of, these superstar players. But it's a little hard to say where things could go next, right? I'm very interested in seeing that. And plus, all of them are not... Like, Embiid, he was on Team USA this time around, but he has talked about how he might play for Cameroon next time. So, in terms of, like, solidifying the next, like, American superstar, that kind of remains to be seen. I think that Anthony Edwards is really good, but he's still not quite there yet. I don't know if he will get there. Jason Tatum, there's been a whole discussion about him. I personally don't really care about any of that stuff. I still think he is a really good player. I don't know if he would consider to be like a generational superstar player. And you never know, it could happen. But so there's a lot of like, in terms of who is going to be kind of up next for the U.S. and both in terms of international play and for the face of the NBA, there's a lot of things to consider there. So, that kind of remains to be seen, but interested in seeing how it goes. And let me just say, and I know I already said this before, and I'm treading the same ground with this, but I was really just thinking about like watching the kind of Olympic game experience, and it's so much more of the sport. You know what I mean? Like I know I keep reiterating that, but it is so much more of the sport itself versus all of the entertainment nonsense that comes with, the advertising and the also like the in-court, like the arena entertainment as well. It's like, cause I was, as you're sort of watching the NBA sort of, not NBA, excuse me, as you're watching sort of the Olympic coverage of the games, you notice that there's like not a ton of just, most of the noise I felt like was coming from, the fans, the attendance, the crowd themselves, as opposed to the noise coming from the arena being like defense, like in a typical NBA arena, which I just is like, it feels sort of like fabricated in a lot of senses. And also just like the noise effects too of like boom, boom. You know what I'm talking about. If you've been to an NBA game, like there's like crowd generating noises, and maybe that's just typical for all American sports, because we're not like conditioned in the way that other places are, like like in, I don't know, for soccer, we're not the same as European countries or European fans, South American fans, like Latin American fans for soccer. Like there's it's just different. It's just to a different degree. We're just not, it's just not within, you know what I mean? It's I don't know why. I don't know why that's the case. That maybe that's a whole nother discussion. It's just like, why do we not have a good, like, why can't we get into why are we not as fanatic as sports as some other countries? And maybe that's just like a whole thing about culture and and history and everything. There could be a whole discussion. Maybe that's already been had. Maybe someone has some article, some piece about it. But I don't know. It's just interesting. But really, it's not just that. I'm not putting all the blame on the crowd themselves, but it is like the in-game experience and the broadcast side of things that have made the NBA watching experience to be sort of, it's kind of sucked. Like, as much as I do love the game, like, just, I honestly mute the broadcast a lot of the time. I mute it for like the commercials. I mute it for like the free throw breaks, like that, all that stuff. It's just so much noise, and I hate it. It sucks. Like, I know I've already complained about it enough, and most likely as the season picks back up in a couple months, I'll continue to complain about it. But it just is. It's just like an insufferable viewing experience, and I don't really blame a lot of other viewers that really kind of hate watching this kind of thing. It's just not great. It's not great. Excuse me. So I don't know. It's again, as I said, it's going to be a bit of a whiplash going from that to this, to the regular kind of NBA game broadcast. Also, the NBC rights thing, I think those don't take effect until 2026, if I'm correct, right? Because I think this upcoming year is going to be the last year that there's going to be NBA on TNT. So I don't know how much that's going to change. Will the NBC broadcast experience be better than the ESPN one or the TNT one? I don't know. I guess we'll wait to see. Definitely, hopefully better than ESPN, man. The ESPN's broadcast is so bad. All right, that's enough. That's enough basketball complaining. I've continued to kind of progress and play through Unicorn Overload. I really don't have too much else to really comment on it, other than the fact that I've just really continued to enjoy it. It's just been a really fun experience. It is wild. And I'm like, sort of like, because it's like, it's honestly coming up that there's going to be a new Zelda game coming in a month or so. And I'm honestly kind of like, preparing for it a little bit. It's pretty, just like the slew of games that we have for the remainder of the year, and considering all the games that I still have in my library / backlog, like there's just, it's good, man. It's good. It is funny. I do listen to some gaming news and gaming related podcasts, and it is interesting hearing how people sort of react and how they talk about how this year is sort of like is a down year. And I think, a lot of it is sort of related to the fact that there's still many issues that have carried forward from kind of the preceding years, in regards to how the industry has sort of handled, things like layoffs and things like, I don't know, there's just a lot of issues in regards to just how, developers are treated. And there was kind of a big news about Bungie laying off just a ton of their staff, and it really is the same ass story about how the CEO is like, he put all his money into yachts and he's not willing to pay his employees. It's always the same shit. It's the same thing every time. It's just, we don't learn. We don't learn. It's just this, it's always kind of the underlying, not even underlying, the very apparent, greed and just the, complacency of executives at the top who are paid way too much for their own good. It's always the same thing. It's always the same conversation. It's how do you hold these people that are in, positions of power accountable and all of these things? It's just really, it's not, I don't even want to say it's unfortunate. It's kind of diabolical. It's really kind of sick. And it sucks that these types of practices seep into pretty much all industries, right? Across the board, and at least on the American side of things. And it's, I don't know. It just sometimes it really takes away from you wanting to continue to, sort of entertain yourself and consume whatever media and consume whatever entertainment there is available. Just because you feel that it just doesn't really, I don't know, feel right in a lot of instances, because you're kind of, I don't know, you might be small in this sort of puzzle, but you being sort of complacent and continuing to, I don't know, I don't know. There's a lot to sort of think about there. I think just the continuing practices on the gaming set front is really kind of despicable, and I hope that it changes. I hope it changes, because I think that because of these types of practices, like, games sometimes don't get made, and games are not going to be, not going to come out. They're not going to be completed, and people get laid off, and there's like kind of livelihood that's at stake there. So yeah, so I kind of understand, maybe there's this sense that maybe people want to kind of step away from games as a form of entertainment, as a form of just sort of whatever, outside of their daily lives and that sort of thing. So but it is like interesting kind of hearing other other people talk about how they haven't really had a ton of the same experiences as they did last year. They haven't been as engaged, which I think is fine. And I think it makes perfect sense, considering how crazy last year was, in terms of the releases, whether it was like Tears of the Kingdom and Elden Ring and all of that. Like, there's just like, not Elden Ring. Elden Ring came out 2 years ago. I'm sorry. I'm getting my timeline is getting messed up. No, Baldur's Gate 3 came out last year, and like Spider-Man 2. There's just like all these massive games that came out last year. So it's a little difficult to, I guess it's pretty difficult to follow that up, because like in terms of big releases, I really can't think of anything that's come out this year that's been massive, right? Like on the Nintendo front, there really hasn't been anything huge that's come out. And I'm even thinking on kind of the Sony and Xbox side of things, and I really can't think of, I don't know, it's hard for me to pinpoint like some AAA game that came out and had like a big splash. It's hard to say. So on that kind of side of things, I can see why maybe people have sort of stepped away and maybe haven't felt the same level of excitement. Myself personally, I've really enjoyed kind of delving into older games. I do, kind of similar to last year, I do want to kind of talk about my kind of year in review, quote unquote. I know we're like kind of, a little over, we're sort of halfway over this year. Well, maybe a little bit more than halfway, but I do want to kind of talk about the games that I have experienced, and a lot of them are sort of older games like Final Fantasy X and Baten Kaitos and what else? Outer Wilds. Like there's a lot of these games are ones that have come out in the past. So it's sort of, in a way, me kind of not catching up, but going through sort of the older backlog, if you want to call it that, and really trying to experience some games that I didn't experience when I was younger. But that's been really great. I've really had a good time with that. I think I've also played newer games too that have come out this year, including Balatro and and Unicorn Overlord. So I feel very, I don't know, satiated on that side of things too, on the newer games side of things too. Like not every year you're gonna have a Tears of the Kingdom. That's just not going to be the case. And for me personally, I think 2022 and 2023 have been really incredible years for me. 2022 was just, it was pretty much Xenoblade 3 for me. That really just kind of consumed my time, but I still had so many other things that I really, I was very happy to kind of play through. So, I think because the last 2 years have been just incredible. Sure, maybe this year feels a bit of a lull, because there isn't that insane, the game that I sort of fall in love with. That's like the most current game. But despite that, I think I've still have had a really, exciting year in terms of what I have played, which includes kind of the older titles, as I mentioned. So, yeah, I sort of said this before, but there's still many games that I have left, that I would like to purchase. And then on top of that, I have the other games that are going to be coming out, the newer games that are going to be coming out, to kind of round out the rest of this year. So a lot of stuff for sure. And I'm very, I continue to be kind of excited for these things, despite, again, how maybe lackluster this year has been, and maybe some of the other like industry issues that have been kind of plaguing just sort of the landscape of things. Speaking of Xenoblade, I know that was not a good transition, but speaking of Xenoblade, so last week, I believe, or maybe it was earlier this week, MonolithSoft put out sort of a press statement of sort of things. I don't know if press statement is like the correct term, but they put out sort of a advertisement, kind of, talking about how they're essentially hiring for new positions to create a new game, which is very exciting. Just exciting to hear them. Just exciting to hear the news that it's sort of confirmed that a new game is on the horizons, right? They called it a new RPG, which could mean anything. So if we want to speculate the timing of things, and a lot of people have kind of laid it out pretty well. MonolithSoft's release schedule is really consistent over the last decade or so. If you look at it, starting in 2015, that was the year that Xenoblade X was released, and then on the Wii U, 2 years after that, we had Xenoblade 2, and then in 2018, we had Torna, which was the DLC for Xenoblade 2. 2019, I don't remember. I don't remember if anything came out that year specifically. So that might have been kind of a gap year. But 2020, we had Xenoblade Definitive Edition. So I think there's sort of like a 2-year gap between Xenoblade, content release dates, excluding kind of the DLC. And then obviously in 2022 we had Xenoblade 3, and then in 2023 we had Future Redeemed. So overall, that's an incredibly consistent release schedule where there is at least a mainline game released every 2 years or so, right? Or some type of content released every 2 years or so. Because honestly, like, I would consider Future Redeemed to be a full-size game, honestly. Like, I clocked in like 45 hours into that, and that's DLC. So I think to sort of, reiterate, it's some type of major content, whether it's mainline game, DLC, that sort of thing, within kind of like a 2-year period. So the expectation is that next year there's going to be either, some kind of new game coming out alongside the release of the Switch 2, or maybe possibly a remaster of something like Xenoblade X, which I think would be dope either way. Or maybe like a remaster, like this is very much like a this is such a shot in the dark, but maybe some kind of Xenosaga remaster, that would be cool as well. But they did mention it was like a new RPG, so I suspect it'll probably be something. It probably won't be Saga. Most likely, actually, I don't even want to say most likely, because there's a lot of things. There's a lot of possibilities. I think if they continue to have kind of the moniker, the name of Xeno in the title, that's most likely gonna be the case. I don't know if it's gonna be a Xenoblade, but this trilogy rounded out pretty well with Future Redeemed, and kind of leave the ending and kind of leave the future of the universe and the story sort of open-ended. So I think that you could sort of not continue that, but start off something new, start off a new saga, if you will, start off a new kind of trilogy, if that is maybe the direction that they're heading in. There's a lot of possibilities. It's hard to really glean too much from the statement that they put out and sort of the hiring kind of reaching out to hire developers, but I think that at least it provides some level of confirmation that they are working on something and that they want to kind of continue to build off of the success of the Blade series and try to make something even bigger and maybe more successful in a lot of senses, right? I'm someone who I do sort of care about the success of the series. So it's been sort of confirmed since I think last the sales numbers for Xeno 3 and kind of the series as a whole overall is like around I think it was like 6 million or something like that, more or less. With I think Xenoblade 1 is like 1.9 million, Xenoblade 2 is like 2.7, and then Xenoblade 3 is 1.9. I can't do the math in my head right now, but if you sort of round that up, it's around 7.6, more or less, I think. Maybe it was a little bit more than that, but I think that as long as Monolith and Nintendo have sort of like a healthy level of expectation for the series, which is like, this is still a very niche series. This is not going to be something along the lines of like a Final Fantasy as much as people want it to be. I mean, I think it would be great if it does reach that level of success, but it's still a very new series, like a decade old, and Final Fantasy has been around for almost 3 decades, so that they have quite a bit of a head start in that sense. But to be kind of maybe like a flagship series for Nintendo's like RPG front, I think that sort of allows them to be, consistently successful as long as they don't kind of blow it out of the water and they're not expecting like 5 or 10 million copies. It's not going to be that. It's not going to be that, and I fully understand that. Like, this is not. It's very hard to try to bring in new players into something like this where it doesn't have the same like, I don't know if attachment rate is the right word, but the name is not something that is going to be well known by many people. Like, people know Final Fantasy, like that's just a name that majority of gamers no, like that. It's one of the, you know, it's one of the kind of the remaining large series that continue to kind of exist. And so there's a lot of name recognition on that front, but it's harder to build something from somewhere. And also, I think it's a little difficult too when, you know, when the Xenoblade games and MonolithSoft are kind of restricted to a Nintendo console, right? You could argue that in terms of having people be, you know, having people get interested in the series, it could be like, listen, we have this premier kind of RPG series that none of the other consoles have. You could argue the same for like Final Fantasy with their, you know, sort of PlayStation exclusivity. So that could sort of like bolster the strength of, you know, the Switch and Switch 2 that's coming up. But it is still difficult to, like, I don't know, I think they've done a pretty good job despite the limitations, despite the fact that it's not the most, like, you know, again, it's very niche. It's still a very niche series. It's difficult to kind of sell the idea of the game. Like, what, like, it's an exciting adventure with like predominantly like British voice actors. It's very difficult to, like, you know, like myself included, like I initially was not, I mean, I guess it's sort of unique because, like, I didn't really care too much about the voice acting when I first got into the series, but I fully understand that it's like it is so difficult to be like, this game is, or this game series is incredible. You got to try it out, and you get, you know, you get introduced to I don't know, do you get introduced to these characters with like heavily kind of like, I don't know, just like really specific like British accents, and it's like, damn, I don't know what this is. Because I don't, like, no, like, what is it? Like, it's its own thing. So I get it. I totally get it. But as long, I'm just, as a fan, I'm happy that they can just kind of, they're able to continue to make these games. Like, I'm happy, and of course, I want kind of the series of whatever Xeno, you know, has, and I would love to kind of see, you know, Takahashi continue to put out things as long as he's able to. But even to that degree, like, I still have kind of the trilogy of games, and I still have these experiences with these games. So of course, you know, I would like to see continued success. But if, you know, if somehow at a certain point, it's not something that I, you know, necessarily want to contemplate, but it's the reality, you know, it might not be, it's possible that it might not be super, you know, there might be like one entry in the series, or, you know, whatever installment that they have, that just doesn't reach the level that they need to in order for them to kind of continue. And that's just kind of the reality of things, right? So in that sense, of course, I want to see success. I want them to continue to see, like, good sales. But it is entirely possible that it might not work out. So I also just kind of want to appreciate what we already have, but also and be excited for the next thing, with also the understanding that it might not continue, right? I mean, look at something like Halo. I mean, again, just kind of going back to Bungie and their sort of incompetence at the executive level. I mean, like, Halo is not really a continuing series, and that was like one of the most successful franchises, for Xbox, back in the day, but now it's not even a thing anymore. So like even the most successful franchises can kind of fall due to just issues with like leadership and maybe mismanaged expectations. So I don't know. It's just something to kind of think about, where your favorite, whatever it is, your favorite franchises, your favorite media, your favorite television shows. This is a huge case with television, where certain series just kind of end very prematurely, right? That's a huge issue, especially kind of during kind of this streaming era. And it's, I don't know. It's really hard to kind of think about these kinds of things, but anything is possible, But yeah, it's, I think it's an interesting question to think about. Not even a question, it's just sort of interesting to ponder, kind of the existence of I don't know, certain mediums. Like you don't get like a happy ending necessarily for a lot of things, because of issues that are sort of outside of the series themselves, right? It's almost like a miracle, honestly, like how like a great series ending on a good note, like getting like a good ending plus like a good ending to a series without sort of the just sort of the middling of the, I don't know, studios and that sort of thing. So I don't know, a lot to kind of think about on that side of things. But yeah, I sort of kind of went on a tangent there, but we got some level of confirmation of MonolithSoft's next project, whether it is going to be Xenoblade or a new IP of that sort of thing. And I'm excited. I sort of have a little bit of expectation that it might come out with the release of the new Switch 2 system. Whether it's going to be like a launch title or if maybe a first year release remains to be seen. But I'm excited, and I was sort of happy to hear that they are in fact doing stuff. That's really kind of the gist of it. Anyways, a lot of things, again, as I said before, a lot of things kind of, on my plate that I have to look forward to as I kind of continue on with my playthrough of Unicorn Overlord. And maybe I pick up some other stuff. I don't know. I'm really trying to hold off on that. There's certain things. There's sales that happen frequently, and it's hard not to be enticed by one of those and be like, "Ooh, that's something I haven't played," and get it. But yeah, Zelda next month. I'm just gonna be excited for that for the next month, because that is so soon. But yeah, anyways, just wanted to do I wanted to do a recap of the Olympics basketball. It's coming up. The end of the Olympics are coming up. It's going to be, I don't know if it's tomorrow or if it's Monday, but the closing ceremony is right around the corner. I don't know if I'm going to really watch anything else, but all things considered, I think it was like pretty successful considering, the the shitty Seine River and people potentially getting sick from swimming in it, and the Olympic Village kind of being sort of this, having no AC and all of these things. I think it turned out to be okay. I don't know. Maybe someone else who's like watched all the events can give a bit of a better wrap up, because I really only watched basketball and soccer. So, someone tell me if the Olympics were good overall. That's going to do it for this week's episode. Thank you for listening. This has been Save the Semantics. Signing off.